Grace, peace, and love from our Father in heaven and from His Son, Yahshua. We're glad that you have tuned in. This is the Yahweh and Yahshua Speak show. We are broadcasting from Yahweh and Yahshua's temple, the Hebrew Husband and Wife Ministry in Evanston, Illinois. And we are going to start out in Revelation, the 12th chapter. Revelation, the 12th chapter. And this is sermon number 2, part 2, entitled, Salvation is Past, Present, and Future. I can forfeit it or embrace it. In Revelation, the 12th chapter. Salvation is past, present, and future. I can forfeit it or embrace it. So I have that free will, and I can do either of those things. Revelation, the 12th chapter. So the scriptures have been misinterpreted and abused when it comes to most subjects. But the truth is still recorded in the scriptures. When it comes to salvation, the book of Revelation, which we're going to read in just a moment, records, quote, now is come salvation, unquote. Revelation 12, and we want to read verse 10. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 10 reads.
Revelation chapter 12 verse 10. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our Elohim and the power of his Mashiach. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our Elohim day and night.
All right, so the scripture says there was a loud voice heard in the heavens saying, now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom and the power of his Messiah, because the accuser of the brethren is cast down. And if you know about Bible subject, you understand this is after the war was initiated by Hasatan, the enemy in heaven. So this reference to salvation coming, quote unquote, now in this verse was spoken before man's creation. It was before he sinned, and it was before he needed salvation. Go to Ezekiel, the 37th chapter. So what is the salvation giver talking about? He said, now has come salvation. That was before he even created man. Before man sinned and before man needed salvation. Ezekiel 37. So what we're going to find out is that the salvation giver said salvation has layers to it. It has layers to it. You get certain parts at certain times. And that is why so many misinterpretations attack the first layer of salvation. Ezekiel 37, we want to read verse 11. Ezekiel 37. And verse 11 reads,
Ezekiel chapter 37 and verse 11. Then he said unto me, Son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Behold, they say, our bones are dried and our hope is lost. We are cut off for our parts.
All right, so here in Ezekiel, you're looking at ancient Israel. And they're talking about, they had some regrets about salvation. It says, then he said unto me, and this is talking about the salvation giver, the creator, Yahweh, Son of man, these bones are the whole house, the whole nation of Israel. He said, they're saying our bones are dry and our hope is lost. So salvation is a hope. He says, we're cut off for something that we did. So they're talking about regrets about salvation. Go to Isaiah 49. And what they're saying in Isaiah 49, Ezekiel 37, is that they are confessing that they actively participated in taking salvation away from themselves. Isaiah 49. They said, hey, we're caught off of what we did. They admitted Oh, that was not the right thing to do. Isaiah 49. We want to read verse 8. Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 8.
Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 8. Thus says Yahweh, in an acceptable time have I heard thee. In a day of salvation have I helped thee. And I will preserve thee and give thee for a covenant of the people to establish the earth, to cause to inherit the desolate heritage.
All right, so we looked in Ezekiel where ancient Israel saying that our hope is lost. We're cut off for something we did. Here in Isaiah is saying, thus said Yahweh, who is a salvation giver. In an acceptable time have I heard thee. And what are you talking about hearing from you? He's talking about hearing from you wanting to receive salvation. And in a day of salvation. So each one of us has a different day of salvation. That is when we came to the point where it was acceptable to us to look at the salvation giver, his salvation is something that we wanted. It says, in a day of salvation have I helped thee. And he said, I'll preserve you and I'll give you for a covenant of the people to establish the earth. This is what our salvation is about, to cause to inherit the desolate heritages. Go to 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter. So the salvation giver said salvation has, quote, a day, unquote. 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter. But I can reject what he said. 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter. He said salvation has a day. 2 Corinthians 6, we want to read verse 2. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2. Let's read.
2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 2. For he saith, I have heard thee in a time accepted, and in the day of salvation have I succored thee. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation.
Now he gives you more clarity about what he was talking about in Isaiah 49. And you notice he mentions the same thing about accepted, acceptable, and day of salvation. For he saith, talking about the salvation giver, I have heard thee, and it mentioned in Isaiah Yahshua about how he heard in an acceptable time. I've heard thee in a time accepted, and in the day of salvation, again, your day was different from my day, have I succored thee, or nourished you, or embraced you. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, and if you didn't know what he was talking about hearing and you being accepted, he said, now is the day of salvation. Go to Romans, the 10th chapter. But anytime and anywhere, I can disagree and I can cut myself off from salvation. Romans, the 10th chapter. Romans, the 10th chapter. We want to read verses 1 to 2. Romans chapter 10. And verses 1 to 2.
Romans chapter 10 and verse 1. Brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Elohim for Israel is that they might be saved. Verse 2. For I bear them record that they have a zeal of Elohim, but not according to knowledge. All
right, so here he is a brother, and he's talking to other ancient Israel, and he's saying, our brethren, my mind's desire and prayer to Elohim for Yisrael is that they might be saved, that they might get salvation. He said, Because I can witness that they have a zeal of Elohim, but he said, but it's not according to knowledge. It's not according to what the Savior, the salvation giver, recorded in the scriptures as what salvation is. Go to Colossians, the 1st chapter. Colossians, the 1st chapter. So we saw in Ezekiel, ancient Israel regretted not accepting what the salvation giver said about salvation being his past, present, and future gift. We started out in Revelation and we saw that. Colossians, the 1st chapter. But they regretted that they did not accept what he said salvation was. Colossians, the 1st chapter. So the baptism process puts a man in the spiritual battle of salvation. There's a battle involved with salvation. Colossians 1, and we're going to read verses 12 to 14. And baptism is the doorway into that battlefield. Colossians 1, over salvation. Colossians 1, verses 12 to 14. Let's read.
Colossians chapter 1, verse 12. Giving thanks unto the Father, which had made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. Verse 13. Who had delivered us from the power of darkness and had translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Verse 14. In whom we have redemption through his blood, even the forgiveness of sins.
So now here is the salvation giver, and he's discussing salvation. And he said those that obtain salvation should give thanks unto Ha'abba the Father. Because through this salvation, what he's done is made us fit to be partakers of an inheritance. Now he mentions a certain type of people called saints, or Kadashim in Hebrew, in light, in spiritual, awakened from spiritual darkness into spiritual light. Then in verse 13 he says, and who have, these people have been delivered from the power of darkness and translated into the kingdom. It says in verse 14, and have redemption through his blood, talking about the Messiah's blood, even the forgiveness of sins. So accepting what he said, what the salvation giver said about salvation, opens the door to going deeper into salvation. The first layer is the baptism process. After the baptism process, then the salvation giver starts teaching what salvation is according to him. Go to 1 Peter, the 1st chapter. 1 Peter, the 1st chapter. So the first layer of salvation, he said in the scriptures, is being reborn from spiritual death into spiritual life. He said in Colossians, he's delivered those who have salvation from the power of darkness and translated them into the kingdom of his Son. And if you know the scriptures, you understand that we are not going up to the Father's kingdom, but the Son has his own kingdom, which is going to come down to the earth, and that's the kingdom that we will be living in for the rest of eternity. So the Father actually is going to come and live in the Son's kingdom. So the first layer of salvation is being reborn from spiritual death into spiritual life. That's delivered from the power of darkness, being translated in the kingdom of his dear Son. The salvation giver said this layer delivers a man from being a prisoner of darkness into freedom of light. 1 Peter, the 1st chapter. And we're going to read verses 4 to 5. So if misinterpretations influence a man to reject the first layer, he remains a prisoner. That's why there's so many attacks coming against that first layer of salvation and trying to block and prevent the salvation giver, what he has said in the scriptures about salvation, from being received by those who have gone through the baptism process. 1 Peter 1 verses 4 to 5. Let's read it, please.
1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 4. To an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, and that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you. Verse 5. Who are kept by the power of Elohim through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time.
So the salvation giver keeps explaining and fleshing out what salvation is according to him, which is the truth of salvation. And he mentions this word inheritance again. We saw in Colossians he mentioned that those who obtain salvation, go through the baptism process, might be partners of the inheritance of the people called saints in light. Now here in 1 Peter, he's saying to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled. That's that inheritance of the saints in light that fades not away and is reserved where? In heaven for those that go through the baptism process. And then it says they're kept by the power of Elohim through believing what he says, what the salvation giver said about salvation. And now he's talking about the layers, ready to be revealed in the last time. Go to Ephesians, the 6th chapter. So the salvation giver used words like, quote, unquote, accepted, and quote, unquote, begotten, referring to the first layer. And then we saw in 1 Peter, we're going to Ephesians 6, that he used this word, ready to be revealed, indicating there's more layers to salvation. Ephesians 6. So there's a helmet of salvation. And the helmet is a proper understanding of what the salvation giver said he gave as salvation from the scriptures. Ephesians 6, we want to read verse 17. This helmet is a proper understanding of what the salvation giver said he gave as salvation according to the scriptures, not according to what anything else says but the scriptures. Ephesians 6, let's read verse 17.
Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 17. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Elohim. All
right, so now here is him encouraging those who have gone through the baptism process, said take. So that's something that he's giving, but I have to receive it, or whoever has salvation, they have to receive it or take it. He said, take the helmet of salvation, and there's a sword of salvation, and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of Elohim. So proper understanding protects a man's mind as military equipment in the spiritual battle surrounding salvation that he joined when he went through the baptism process. The salvation giver, we're going to read Ephesians 6:16, and we're going to see the salvation giver said words are being said like missiles against a man's proper understanding of what he said salvation is. So let's read Ephesians 6:16. So he said words are being fired like missiles against what he said in the scriptures and against a man having a proper understanding of what salvation is. Ephesians 6:16.
Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 16. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked.
Now he's talking about some fiery darts here, but he said, above everything else, take the shield, take the belief. Sometimes people use this word faith so much, then it seems to have no meaning, or it just seems so general and so vague. Above all, believing what the salvation giver said in the scriptures. So he said, you take that, you take the helmet of salvation, and that is believing what he said and what he's telling you salvation is. Now he's saying take the shield of belief about what he said, because he said when you believe what the salvation giver said in the scripture about what salvation is, you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked, or all the fiery missiles that are being sent against a proper understanding of what salvation is, that the salvation giver said it is. Go to James the 3rd chapter. James the 3rd chapter. So the salvation giver said, for this reason, he gave a man a shield to protect himself against the word missiles. See, those missiles are in the form of words. He gave man a shield to protect himself against the word missiles, aimed as military fire from the enemy, and his understanding of salvation. Going to James the 3rd chapter, and then we want to read what are these words dart that we read about in Ephesians the 6th chapter. So it's talking about fiery darts of the enemies. What are those darts? James, yes, let's read that.
The English word darts is the Greek word found in strong exalted concordance of the Old and New Testaments, number 956. Strong defines darts as from Greek number 906, meaning a missile, an object which is forcibly propelled at a target from a weapon. For example, spear or arrow.
All right, so but we're not talking naturally, we're talking spiritually. And it said a dart is a missile. And this missile is in the form of words forcibly propelled at a man's mind as a target, used as a weapon. Go to James the 3rd chapter, we're going to read verses 8 to 10. So when we're looking at what the salvation giver says, what are these missiles? They're not natural missiles. We're going to find out they're word missiles. Fiery darts are word missiles. James 3 verses 8 to 10.
James chapter 3 and verse 8. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. Verse 9. Therewith bless we Elohim, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of Elohim. Verse 10. Out of the same mouth proceeded blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not so to be.
So this is that in that power of darkness, man didn't used to have a forked tongue. But under the power of darkness, and until he goes through the baptism process, and then the salvation giver teaches him and he accepts what salvation is, out of the same mouth will come blessing and cursing. It says the tongue, we're talking about these missiles that the salvation giver said is involved in the battle that a man joins after he receives salvation. It said the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil full of deadly poison. Those are where those missiles are coming from people's mouths that the enemy is still using under the power of darkness to come against what the salvation giver said salvation is in the scriptures. He said with that tongue, he said there are those that bless Elohim, even Ha'abba or the Father, and then they curse men, which are made after the similitude of Elohim. He said out of the same mouth comes blessing and cursing. In another place it says sweet water and bitter water. He said, my brethren, now he's talking about those that have gone through the baptism process. He said, these things ought not so to be. So that's one thing that the salvation giver in the scriptures lets those that have been through the process start training themselves to not do. Go to Galatians, the 4th chapter. So, word missiles. So it's talking about the tongue now. When you talk about this battle around salvation, spiritual battle, not a natural battle. Go to Galatians, the 4th chapter. Word missiles are being fired saying, once a man obtains salvation, he cannot lose it. Word missiles are being fired saying, man cannot obtain salvation until after he dies. Word missiles are being fired saying, man has no benefits with salvation, and humans cannot be part of the salvation giver's family. They cannot be his sons or daughters or even have a relationship with him. Those are fiery dart word missiles coming against a man to try to influence him that the salvation giver did not say what he said in his word about salvation. He's the only one that can tell us what salvation is or is not. Galatians 4, and we want to read verse 19. Galatians chapter 4 and verse 19. Let's read it.
Galatians chapter 4 and verse 19. My little children, of whom I travail in birth again, until Mashiach be formed in you.
All right, so now here is this man, and he's talking about this battle of salvation after receiving baptism, or even before deciding to be baptized. And so he's saying, even after men and women get baptized, he says, oh, my little children. He's not talking to natural little children, he's talking to adults. The salvation giver calls them the salvation giver calls the children of Yisrael little children. It says, my little children, of whom I travail in birth. So he's talking to adults. And he's saying, I'm travailing in birth again until Mashiach be formed in you. So what is he talking about? Now this is a man. What is he talking about? He's travailing in birth. Let's see what these English words, what does that mean when he's saying he's travailing? He's not talking about something natural. He's not having a natural baby. Let's read it.
The 4 English words, I travail in birth, are one Greek word found in Strong's Exalted Concordance of the Old and New Testaments, number 5605. Strong defines I travail in birth as from Greek number 5604, meaning to experience the pains of the action of giving birth to young, childbirth literally or figuratively, pain or labor in pain.
Now, so
labor in birth.
Mm-hmm. So now what he's talking about, and he's teaching a group of people that have gone through the baptism process, and he's letting them know about the salvation giver's salvation according to what he said in the scriptures that it is and that they have. But he said that I'm going through some pains here trying to get the truth of what salvation is across to you, my little children, my brothers and sisters. He said it's figuratively like experiencing the pains of the act of giving birth to young. Childbirth literally, and he's saying until Mashiach be formed in you, until you get that mind, get that understanding about what in the scriptures the salvation giver said salvation is. He said, but there's labor and pain involved. Go to Revelation, the 12th chapter. So he's just talking about the battle surrounding salvation. Because the whole battle that's going on is for souls. There's one person that's trying to win souls and take souls to the kingdom. Then there's somebody else that's trying to take souls, win souls, and take them to the lake of fire. Revelation 12, verses 1 to 2. Revelation chapter 12, and let's read verses 1 to 2.
Revelation chapter 12 and verse 1. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Verse 2. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered.
So this is talking about the group of people that the salvation giver gives salvation to, and they accept salvation. And it said, this is talking about this spiritual battle surrounding salvation. It said, there appeared a great wonder in Shemayim of heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. So this is representing the nation of Yisrael that was set up by the salvation giver to help point the way of men and women to salvation. It said, and this nation that was set up, being with child, cried. There's that word, travailing in birth, pain, labor, trying to get the point across of what the salvation giver said salvation is, and pained to be delivered. It's a painful process to get the salvation giver's truth across about what he said salvation and what he has given as salvation. Go to Hebrews the 4th chapter. Hebrews the 4th chapter. So there's pain and there is labor. And part of the reason is because of all of these word missiles that are being aimed at the salvation giver and what he said salvation is, and them trying to redefine and trying to bring him down to their level and explain him and minimize what he has said salvation is. Hebrews the 4th chapter. And we're going to read verse 3. Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 3. So the salvation giver defines salvation as painful labor. And he gives it to be received in the middle of those fiery word missiles. So we must understand that. He gives the salvation gift to be received in the middle of those fiery word missiles. And he said it's painful labor. It's a fight. Hebrews 4 and 3. Let's read it.
Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 3. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. Now,
when we started out in Revelation, where he said, now has come salvation, again, before man was even created, before man sinned, before he needed salvation, he said, we which have believed, we enter into rest when we accept what the salvation giver described as salvation and said salvation is about and comes with salvation. And he said, because I've sworn in my wrath, this is the salvation giver, the creator saying, if they shall enter into my rest, if they shall rest on what I'm telling them salvation is, instead of all this he said, she said, and Johnny come lately trying to update him, which they cannot do. He said, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. He said, I spoke this from eternity, and I explained in the scriptures about the layers of salvation before I even created anything. He said, I finished it before I even started it. Go to Ephesians, the 2nd chapter. Ephesians 2. So contrary to the fiery word missiles, the salvation giver said, before man was created, sin and needed salvation. From eternity, he ordained and conferred holy orders upon salvation. And no man can change what he has said. He conferred holy orders on salvation. Ephesians 2, you want to read verses 5 to 6. He didn't just leave it up in the air. Ephesians chapter 2, let's read verses 5 to 6.
Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 5. Even when we were dead in sins, hath quickened us together with Mashiach. By grace ye are saved. Verse 6. And hath raised us up together, and hath made us sit together in heavenly places in Mashiach Yahshua.
So the salvation giver keeps using these present tense words, past tense words about salvation. He said, even when we were dead in sins, before we went through the baptism process, he quickened us together with Mashiach, with the Messiah. So the salvation giver keeps going into his eternity mindset, telling man about the past, present, and future of salvation. He said, by grace you are saved. So now when you were dead in sins, and how could you be saved? And now it says, you are saved. That's a present tense word. But then in verse 6, he uses a past tense word. He says, hath raised us up together. It's Old English, but that means it's already happened. And made us, that's past tense. Present tense is make. He said, made us sit together in heavenly places. How? In Mashiach Yahshua, in the Messiah. So the salvation giver keeps switching because he conferred holy orders upon salvation. And what he said salvation is, that's what it is, regardless of what anybody else says. Go to Ephesians, the 1st chapter. So the salvation giver's holy orders set up salvation with a past, present, and future, regardless of what fiery word missiles say. Ephesians 1, let's read verse 6.
Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 6. To praise the glory of Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 6. To the praise of the glory of his grace, wherein he has made us accepted in the beloved.
It says to the praise of his kabod, his glory, in his hand, his grace. Here's this past tense word he's using, wherein he hath, or has already, made us, there's another past tense word, accepted in the beloved. So who are the beloved? It's the group of people that he calls the saints, that have gone through the baptism process. So the word accepted is past tense, and it is used where the salvation giver is letting you know what he said about what salvation is. So let's read this. What is that word? Accepted.
The English word accepted is the Greek word found in Strong's Exalted Concordance of the Old and New Testament, number 5487. Strong defines accepted as being from Greek number 5485, meaning willing to be fair and honest. For example, to give and voluntarily transfer something to another without compensation, with special honor, to make accepted, to be and be highly preferred or recommended.
All right, so accepted, he said that he has made us accepted in the beloved. That's what he said. This is what the salvation giver says salvation is. And it means to gift and voluntarily transfer something to another without compensation. So we read another place, he said salvation is transferring you from darkness and translating you into the kingdom of his son. Now that's what he said about salvation. But you have these fiery dart word missiles in the battle surrounding salvation that will tell you the opposite. He said you have been given accepted or special honor, and you've been highly preferred or recommended. By who? By the salvation giver. Go to 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter. He had seen earlier where he mentions that he calls the people that have gone through the baptism process and accepted the gift of salvation. He calls them saints. That's the special honor that they've been given. 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter. They've been highly preferred. And anybody that believes what he says over what anybody else says is always highly preferred. Because the majority of people are believing what the majority says rather than him. 2 Chronicles, the 6th chapter, we're going to read verses 40 to 41. 2 Chronicles, chapter 6, verses 40 to 41. Let's read.
2 Chronicles, chapter 6, and verse 40. Now, my Elohim, let, I beseech thee, thy eyes be open, and let thy ears be attent unto the prayer that is made in this place. Verse 41. Now therefore arise, O Yah Elohim, into thy resting place, thou and the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests, O Yah Elohim, be clothed with salvation, and let thy saints rejoice in goodness.
Now here's the salvation giver saying that salvation is clothing. It said Elohim will, his eyes will be open and his ears will be open to the prayers of the people that have gone through the baptism process and the prayers that are made in the temple, the assemblies, the places to assemble that he said that the people that have gone through that process assemble, they come. It says that's his resting place, the ark of his strength. And he said, let your people be clothed, where salvation is clothing. This is a salvation giver. Now he's telling you what salvation is. He said, put it on like clothing. And then he said, let these people called saints rejoice in the goodness that comes with what you gave as salvation. Go to 1 Peter, the 1st chapter. So in opposition to fiery word missiles, the salvation giver said his salvation is entrance into a lively hope group of humans he calls, quote unquote, saints. 1 Peter, the 1st chapter. In opposition to the word missiles. He said salvation is his entrance into this lively hope group of humans he calls saints. 1 Peter, 1st chapter and verse 3. 1 Peter, chapter 1 and verse 3. Let's read it.
1 Peter, chapter 1 and verse 3. Blessed be Yahweh and Abba of our Elohim, Yahshua Mashiach, which according to his abundant mercy has begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Yahshua Mashiach from the dead.
Now this is talking about this first layer of salvation being changed from being spiritually dead to becoming spiritually alive. He said, blessed be Elohim and Ha'abba, Father of our Master, our Adon Yahshua Mashiach, according to his abundant mercy. Here we go past tense, where the salvation giver is talking about salvation. Hath begotten, that's past tense. That means you got it after you went through the baptism process. Again, unto a lively hope. How? By the resurrection of Yahshua Mashiach from the dead. So these words, lively hope, are used to reveal the layers to salvation again. So lively hope is confidence and trust, full of life and energy. It is active and outgoing, focused on thinking about what the salvation giver said is possible and what has been given with salvation. That's why all these fiery word missiles are coming against that first layer of salvation, because they're hoping to mess up the rest of salvation. If they can mess up that first layer and get a man to be influenced by it or reject it, then all the rest of the layers to salvation will not be uncovered by him. So let's see what this English word begotten, we see this English word begotten is used again, and it's in the past tense again. So it's not talking about something that you don't have. Once you went through the baptism process, this is talking about past tense. All right, let's read it.
The English words begot and begotten are the same Greek word found at Strong Exalted Concordance of the Old and New Testaments, number 1080. Strong's defines begot and begotten as from a variation of Greek number 1085, meaning to procreate property of the father, but by extension of the mother, to regenerate, bear, be born, bring forth, conceive, be delivered of.
Excuse me, do you have number 3205? Do you see 3205 in here? No. Y'all add? When this word begotten?
3205 was the one that I read before.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, well, please read that for me again. Okay, and then we'll read the begat later. Okay?
Okay. So, the English word begotten is the primitive Hebrew root word yalad, found in Strong Exalted Concordance of the Old and New Testament, number 3205. Strong defines begotten as to bear young, causatively to beget, medically to act as midwife, specifically to show lineage, bear, birth, birthday, born, make, to bring forth children or young, bring up, calf, child, be delivered of a child, time of delivery, gender, hatch, labor, do the office of a midwife, declare pedigrees, be the son of, woman in painful or laborious effort, woman that engages in painful or laborious effort, and engaging in painful or laborious effort, woman.
All right, so this past tense English word begotten, it says to child, to be delivered of a child. So the salvation giver is saying, when you go through after you go through the baptism process, he said, I have delivered you as a child. You got a birth, you have a birthday. You've been born. You've been calved. I have been delivered of a child. It was your time of delivery. But he also said it is painful and laborious effort. Go to 1 John, the 5th chapter. 1 John, the 5th chapter. Tell me about that battle over salvation. So what did you know now? You have been begotten unto a lively hope by the resurrection of the Messiah and accepting him as your Savior. And he said, then you also have been born, that begotten. One of the definitions is born, having a birthday. 1 John 5, and we're going to read verse 1. 1 John chapter 5, and verse 1 reads.
1 John chapter 5 and verse 1. Whosoever believeth that Yahshua is the Mashiach is born of Elohim, and everyone that loveth him that begot loveth him also that is begotten of him.
All right, and so you got these fiery dart missiles around this word born again. It says, whosoever believeth that Yahshua is HaMashiach, or the Messiah. She's talking about the same verse that we just read in 1 Peter, the resurrection of Yahshua from the dead. Whosoever believes that is born of Elohim. Same word as begotten. It says, and everyone that loves him, that begat. So this begat is a past tense of begotten. He that begat loveth him also that is begotten of him. So now let's look at the English words begat and begotten, because they're the same words that we just defined, where it talked about medically to act as a midwife. So the salvation giver gave salvation. He's medically acting as a midwife to bring you forth through the baptism process from spiritual death into spiritual life, being born from spiritual death into spiritual life. So let's read the begat and begotten definitions.
The English words begot and begotten are the same Greek word found at Strong Exalted Concordance of the Old and New Testament, number 1080. Strong's defines begot and begotten as from a variation of Greek, number 1085, meaning to procreate properly of the father, but by extension of the mother, to regenerate, bear, be born, bring forth, conceive, be delivered of, gender, make, and create offspring.
So what the salvation giver is saying about salvation is said, I'm making offspring. I regenerated you. It says begat and begotten means to procreate properly of the Father. To be born, to conceive. Go to 1 John 5, and we'll want verse 18. So he's telling us what his salvation is, and that is the truth about salvation. 1 John 5 and verse 18. Let's read.
1 John chapter 5 and verse 18. We know that whosoever is born of Elohim sinneth not, but he that is begotten of Elohim keepeth himself, and that wicked one toucheth him not.
All right, so now we're looking at the same word again, born, begat, begotten. We know that whosoever is born of Elohim, and he that is begotten of Elohim. So this begat and begotten in verse 18 are the same Greek word as Strong's number 1080, used for the English words born of and begotten of. Born again, conceived, procreated, regenerated. Go to John, the 1st chapter. Book of John, the 1st chapter. How many ways does the salvation giver have to say it? But he's patient, he's kind, he's gentle, because he wants us all to get it. And he wants you to understand you're in the middle of a battle surrounding salvation, and surrounding salvation having layers, and what exactly he said salvation is. But all you have to do is get in his word and then believe what he's telling you about salvation and sound out the noise demons. John 1, 12 to 13. Let's read it.
John chapter 1 and verse 12. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of Elohim, even to them that believe on his name. Verse 13, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of Elohim.
So he keeps coming up with this word, this born. It's the same word. It says, as many as received him, what the salvation giver says salvation is, to them gave he power. And now this comes against this word missile about how you can't be a son or a daughter, you can't have a relationship with him. He gave him power to become the sons of Elohim, even to them that believe on his name. Now somebody lying up in here, and the salvation giver said in his word, he cannot lie. So I choose whoever is saying what he didn't say about what he said salvation is. He said he gave him power to become the sons of Elohim that believe on his name. Then he said they were born, not of blood. It's not talking about something natural here. Nor the will of the flesh, nor the will of man, but of Elohim. So it's just talking about this begatting. It's just talking about what happened with baptism. Is the identical thing that the salvation giver said in the scriptures happened with baptism. Go to Exodus, the 15th chapter. So the two English words were born in John, the 1st chapter, are the same Greek word as Strong's number 1080, with the same meaning as born of, begat, begotten of, and born. And just because someone may like to choose one definition for the word over another, it does not nullify the other definition.